Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. It's time for another Generation 1 Transformer toy review. This week we're going to take a look at a Micromaster Transport, something we haven't looked at in a long time. This time around it's the Autobot Troop Transport Overload. Now Overload would be released in 1989. He would be one of 4 of these toys released that year, and he would only be available in 1989. He would be discontinued in 1990, just before the toy line would be ended. Now, of course, Overload, as I said, is part of the Transport class of Micromaster, which basically means that his vehicle here, his little vehicle, becomes a trailer of sorts for him to tow. And that's basically the exciting part about him, other than the fact that he himself is a unique Micromaster, something that would not be carried over in 1990 when they did the Combiner transports. They just recycled guys. But Overload here, like all of the others that were released in '89, they were all unique Micromasters, specially built for these toys. We'll take a look here at Overload himself. And he almost looks like a midget version of Optimus Prime in a lot of ways. The truck cab clearly emulates that of Optimus Prime. It's not the same model, since, as we can see, he's short a set of wheels back here. Why they did not include the extra set is unknown, why he wasn't made with them. And of course, unlike Optimus, Overload's arms are the smokestacks of the truck, not pull-out sections from the side. They probably did that again to keep the similarities between him and the famed Autobot leader minimal. But I think the world's smallest Optimus Prime is about this size, or maybe a little smaller. And it can have the arms pull out from the side, so oh well, what can we say about it? Well, let's take a look at Overload's articulation real briefly. He can rotate his arms all the way at the shoulders, and he does have a joint at his hip. Does allow his legs to fold all the way back for transforming, but they can also fold all the way forward, so he can properly sit down in his vehicle. And of course he has an ankle joint, but again, that's more for transforming him. Let's shift part of this out of the way, and we'll put him inside his vehicle so you can get a look at how he looks inside there. Get my hand out of the way. And here he is inside his airplane. Or as they call it, an armored carrier. Which I really don't see it, folks. Looks more like just some sort of small plane. Although from a few angles, it almost looks like it takes its inspiration slightly from the T-65 X-Wing from Star Wars. Mainly with the long nose and the extra long guns. The More Than Meets the Eye guides also suggest that this vehicle can be used as a hydrofoil, so it can skim across the water. And while that's, again, a little hard to believe given how the toy is designed, but you do see underneath here, you do have access to the trailer's wheels. So this plane will actually roll along a good surface. Not very well due to those little dinky wheels, but It will roll across a flat surface like so, so I guess it will work out. It could work out as a hydrofoil with imagination. But I think more kids would probably have fun with it as as like an airplane or a starfighter or something. It does swoosh reasonably well here in your hands. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it does swoosh pretty good. It's not bad. Alright, let's get him out of there. Came out awfully easily there. I'd say I didn't have him secured well enough. Okay. Let's move on to transforming Overload. And, of course, we're going to fold his head down into the top of the body. We'll lower his arms down to the side, so we got the smokestack pointing up. His fists double as the fuel tanks, so those should definitely be resting down there at the bottom. Come down here, fold his feet down flat like so. Then we bend the legs backward. And then there we have it. He's a semi-truck cab. Specifically a cab-over-engine model. The exact model is a little hard to tell, just going by his mold, especially since they've taken some liberties with it to make the robot. So it's very similar in appearance to Optimus Prime, but I won't go that far as to say he's the exact same model, especially since the original Optimus Prime toy, the Battle Convoy, was released in 1983, the year before it became the Transformer we all know and love. And since this was put out in 1989, I would suggest if it is the same type of truck, it's probably a few years newer than the one Optimus is. And at any rate, well, he's got wheels here on the bottom. He rolls actually pretty good, despite all that. Of course, the wheels on him are pretty loose, or at least they are on mine. This one got a fair amount of play wear back in the day. Anyway, let's set him aside for the moment. And we get the trailer here. Let's get this jet converted back into the trailer. Start by taking the red nose piece and we fold it underneath, like so. And of course we'll grab the console and controls, fold them all the way out, like so. The wings you just fold up so they come out on top. And then we'll raise up the steering bar that he had and connect it to the guns. And there we have the trailer. Now, of course, it's not specified as to what sort of cargo he's carrying. So that's more or less left up to your imagination. And, of course, here at the back, you do have a ramp that does fold down. Now, since he's specifically labeled as a troop transport, you could put a few other Micromasters in here and kind of emulate Ultra Magnus carrying troops into battle. But you could also put in some other things in here, like say you could put in some Lego bricks in here and he's hauling cargo. Kind of a cute idea. And of course, down here at the bottom, there's a hole right here at the front, which will connect to the peg on the back of Overload. Let's get that in, get his head back down. And there's the complete toy, all connected together. And it rolls okay. Rolls okay. It's not perfect. It's a little bit better than when it's in the jet mode, but it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's not bad. No, not really that bad at all. The only real downside is to do any turns, you really don't get much range of motion on turning him. And I'll show you here up close and on the underside. See, you really don't get a lot of range of motion with him. Maybe if his legs went out a couple of millimeters more, that'd make all the difference, and you could emulate some real decent turns on this truck. Otherwise, he's making some pretty wide and sharp turns. So it kind of hurts some of the play value. Alright, getting down to the loose parts. Well, this is it. This is what you get for the toy. Overload himself and the trailer. So, you're not really looking at any real major loose parts. If you're pretty lucky, you might actually be able to get both of them together and probably not pay a whole lot of money for them. So, moving right along here, we're going to take a look at his card. I'm going to get them out of the way for the moment because I have a bonus card. Right here, we have the American issued card. And then right next to it, I'm going to set up what we have is a European released card. As you can see here, well, let's stand this one up a little bit more. You can clearly see here that the American card is just slightly smaller than the European card. Thus, of course, the American card also has this green color here where the toy would be resting on the package, whereas clearly on the European card, it doesn't have that. And of course, the European card also went with the J-hook style for hanging on the post, whereas the American one just uses the standard one. We'll turn them around so that you can see the back sides of them. And then we'll bring both of them up close so that they can be seen a little bit more. Now the European one over here is covering 2 languages. I'm guessing, and don't take my word for it, but I'm guessing that it is French and Dutch. So as you can see, it's kind of squished together a little to get everything in there. Whereas here on the American one, since it's all in English, it's a little bit easier to read. But then again, if you can read French and Dutch, that is, if we can prevent the camera from being knocked off the tripod, adjust the tripod stand there a little bit so it doesn't do that. Okay. Let's get on with taking a look at this card here. See up here we have a crude drawing of Overload. I like the way the guns are presented in this drawing, just like they are on the picture down here. Kind of looks a little better than how the actual toy turned out. It look like dual cannons here on this drawing, but as you can see here on the toy, it's hard to tell if it's supposed to be some rather large multi-barreled gun or if it's basically like a form of a Gatling gun or something. You really can't tell. I just think this looks a little wilder. At any rate, we get what it includes, and get car carrier trailer and Overload himself. And we move on to how to connect the two together, how to transform it into the armored carrier, and of course how to transform Overload himself. And then how to put him inside. And of course we get the message here about save your robot points and study your tech specs. And down beneath it we have the barcode and the robot points. He was worth 1 point. Now, before we go to the tech spec, we'll take a quick glance over here on the European card, just for sake of comparison. It's more or less going in the exact same order. And then, of course, over here we get it both to collect your robot points and your tech specs. And we get the same barcode, which coincidentally is the exact same number. And, of course, the 1 robot point. And then, of course, we have tech spec, which we should get to now. Taking a look here, it's done in red to signify he's an Autobot, and even lists him as an Autobot. And of course the picture down here at the bottom represents the same picture on the front of the card. Nice to have that good card around. It gives his name as Overload, and his function is troop transport. His motto is, know your enemy and he's yours. A bold and daring soldier, often breaks away from cargo hauling missions to join his fellow Autobots on the battlefield. A tactical genius on the front line. Trailer converts to turbo-boosted supersonic fighter jet armed with wing-mounted double-barreled machine guns. And again, this does not look like a double-barreled machine gun. Laser-guided lock target scanners provide pinpoint firepower, capable of reaching speeds in excess of Mach 2. Also equipped with hydrofoil capabilities. Okay, that's where the More Than Meets the Eye guide got it. It's here on the card. At any rate, we'll move us over here to the tech spec. This is, again, the style used in 1989. It gives his strength as 5, his intelligence is 8, his speed is 7, his endurance is 8, his rank is 5, his courage is 8, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 6. So all in all, he's pretty reasonably powerful, or at least he's decently smart, because he's lacking a little bit in strength. But he's got good stats everywhere else. But now we get down to my thoughts and some more info on Overload. Overload was a nice guy to have in your army if you were collecting the Micromasters at the time. As with him being a car carrier, and there were a fair amount of cars in the Micromaster lineup, he could carry a small squad with him into battle. Plus, of course, if you happen to have a bunch of loose Lego bricks laying around, he could haul those around as cargo, and there you go. It added a little bit of play fun to it. The More Than Meets the Eye guidebooks further expand upon Overload's bio, as the bio mentioned that he often abandons his cargo hauling missions to join the others on the battlefield. That's because, according to these guides, Overload feels that the more he studies the Decepticons, the more he will understand them and be able to come up with better ways to defeat them. Unfortunately, the Autobot High Command does not view his philosophy very well and seem to think he's getting in over his head, since he apparently at one point did have a more prestigious role as a tactician, but he's been downgraded to troop transport, more to help in the hopes that they can get his brain back on track on his tactical genius instead of always wanting to observe and learn more about the Decepticons. This may be a time that the Autobot High Command could be wrong in what they're doing with him. You've got somebody that is brave enough to want to get a better understanding of the Decepticons, and maybe that could help lead to an everlasting peace between the two Transformer factions and put an end to the long-standing war. However, since we're not seeing any of Overload's methods, that could be part of what's making the judgment of him a little bit difficult. We're not exactly getting to see how he's observing the Decepticons, or what all it's doing that's made them think that he's getting a few screws loose in his head. But all in all, the addition to the bio on him does make him a bit more of an interesting character, instead of coming off from the way the card backer reads as just somebody that's willing to abandon his normal job just to get into the action. It almost makes him sound like an action junkie, when instead he's more wanting to gain more of an understanding. However, he does need to learn his responsibilities, as supplies he's dumped somewhere so that he can go back can obviously be stolen by other Decepticons, or even by humans, if possible. And thus he's leaving his buddies that are waiting for those supplies. They're stuck waiting longer, and anybody that's seen some military dramas knows that if camps are let go without supplies for a while, things can get pretty desperate while they wait on new stock to arrive. As a toy, though, Overload isn't bad. I mean, he really doesn't have a whole lot of extra accessories, but I don't think he really needs extra accessories. I mean, he's a cargo carrier, basically. Predominantly meant to carry cars. You want cars for him to carry? Throw on some Micromasters. Or if you don't have Micromasters, load him up with some Micro Machines. They'll serve just as good of a purpose. Or if you'd rather him haul cargo, throw in some loose Lego blocks. There you go. Problem solved. His jet mode? It's not bad. It could be better, but it does have the play potential, and it does give us another Autobot that can fight in the skies, something the faction has definitely suffered a lack of. The only real gripe that I have is the fact that the truck looks a little too much like Optimus, and I'm sure a fair amount of fans have also had that gripe about the toy as well. Like it's coming off that they shrunk Optimus Prime. And nope, they didn't shrink him to be a Micromaster. This is a totally original character, but you can't help but notice some of the similarities between him and the Autobot leader. But overall, in general, I think Overload is a middle-tier character. He does have his faults, but as a toy, he does seem to carry a bit of the fun, and the expanded history on him does make Overload an interesting character to have in your army. So who knows, maybe one day he will get back to being the master tactician that he was and lead the Autobots to victory. And that concludes my review of the Generation 1 Autobot Troop Transport Overload. If you liked the video, leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you'll be notified of all future videos. Please also consider sharing your thoughts of Overload in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I'll catch you all later.